Just in the breaking news, TJ McConnell's contract extended four more years for the 32-year-old McConnell, tying him to Indiana for a while. Wow, how did we get to this point? What does it mean for McConnell and the Pacers? Quick reactions on today's bonus Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Friday or Saturday or whatever weekend day you were tuning in, and welcome into another emergency edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we have got to talk about the breaking news. TJ McConnell contract extension here in late August, reported by Woj. I can confirm it. There's a lot to dive into. Apologies for this janky setup if you're watching on YouTube or listening. I'm in Chicago for Fever Sky. The Sky Arena is 2 feet out of frame for you guys. I'm in the ballroom, actually, in a fitting location. This, where I'm sitting right now, is where the NBA draft lottery is held. I've been here before for that, and TJ McConnell did not care about the lottery. He went undrafted, and he just signed a contract that will pay him $45 million more to get him close to $100 million in career earnings. We'll break it down, what it means for McConnell and the Pacers, and plenty more in a quick, shorter one today. And then next Monday, we'll get into the big ripple effects that people have questions about. Next year's spending for the Pacers. Where does this mean for the rest of their team? Can they keep this group together should they want to? I haven't even said it. I'm Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and we have to dive in. TJ McConnell back with the Pacers, reported by Woj, originally confirmed by his agency and myself immediately. 4-year extension for TJ McConnell. The reported number is $45 million. I don't know any specifics about guarantees in the out years. I only wonder that because a couple things. It's 4 years that starts after the coming season. So it's 5 years in total. So TJ McConnell will be 37 in the final year of this. His current contract this season that is happening starting in about a month was originally partially guaranteed. There's precedent for McConnell having a partial guarantee. He'll be older by the end. I don't know if it's all $45 million guaranteed yet, but I have a suspicion that it's not all fully guaranteed, but I don't know that. We'll talk about that Monday when more details come in. But still, this was the only big line item left of the Pacers summer. Are they going to do this? Are they not? Their future spending made it a little more precarious. I actually predicted on a very recent podcast doing What Are the Odds of Jimmy Cook? 49% was my feeling that this happening or not. So I said below 50% chance barely, and it happened. 4 years, $45 million. Why does this make sense? Why did it happen, right? Well, so clearly he's good, and having good players under contract is worth doing, right? That's why the Pacers would do this. My thesis for McConnell has always been as follows. Besides that he's a good player, just had a career year, over 10 points a game for the first time, stepped up in a major way when Ben Mathurin got hurt as a passer and as a scorer, was the perfect glue for that bench group. Somehow a lineup of Ben Shepherd, Obi Toppin, and Isaiah Jackson together could hum in the postseason. I mean, that was remarkable. And McConnell and his offensive abilities really made it all possible, right? And we can dive into his past season and can that be expected in the future going forward. That's really what made this happen. But to me, the key part of TJ McConnell being with the Pacers specifically is this. He can play that system. Tyrese Haliburton runs so fast, flings the ball around. The Pacers get up shots quick. Their pace is enormous. They're so unpredictable. And it's so hard to scout against them. It's so hard to defend them. And Haliburton sets that style, and he's amazing at it. He's the best in the league at playing that style. And the fear would be, if you're the Pacers, that when he's not in the game, whoever is running the show instead can't play like that. I would point to the Denver Nuggets as an example of this issue. Jokic is so amazing. They won a championship. They do not need to apologize for that. But they've had a trouble forever, no matter who it is. Even when it was Plumlee, who can kind of pass, they could not and cannot and probably never will find a backup center who can play enough like Jokic that their system looks the same, regardless of who's on the floor. How many point guards in the NBA, how many backups who are playing 18 to 22 minutes a night, let's say, can play like Tyrese Haliburton, and it works? They're not just throwing the ball all over the gym. They're not inefficient. They're not making mistakes. It's still high tempo, high pace, powerful offense. Not very many. Even the best backup point guards who are worthy of the kind of money TJ McConnell just got, your Tyus Joneses, your Kobe White before he exploded a little bit, those kind of guys. Trey Jones, Tyus' brother, Monte Morris before getting hurt a few times. They were not doing this. TJ McConnell can do it. And that is why he is such a valuable piece for the Pacers, and why I was curious if this extension would happen. I didn't think it would because of their finances next year, and that will be on Monday's podcast. But it does make sense in that way, especially with what this deal is. I don't know anything about the specifics, but 4 years, $45 million. If it starts at exactly $10 million with max raises, that would be 4 years, $44.8 million. Agents do a lot of rounding. It's very possible that that's the number. If it's an 8% raise over his current year salary starting next year, that would be 4 years at $44.997 million. Both of those seem like very logical structures to me. Both of them would start him at about $10 million next year and would then put the Pacers in a spot where they have to go, what does this look like with the rest of our team? But they should figure that out later. Now, they have to figure that out because TJ McConnell is on the team under contract for a while. 5 more seasons in total. For those who might be a little confused or unaware, a 4-year extension starts after his current deal. So he has this season already, and then 4 years after that at that $45 million total. And so this is what the Pacers have done with a lot of their moves this summer, and what is clearly something they are intentionally doing now. TJ McConnell now under contract through 2028-29. Add him to their lengthening list of players under contract for the next 3 years through 2027. That year sounds fake to me. Through the year 2027, the following players are under contract with the Pacers: Tyrese Haliburton, Pascal Siakam, Obi Toppin, Aaron Nesmith, TJ McConnell, likely Jarris Walker, likely Ben Shepherd, Andrew Nembhard, and Johnny Furphy are all under contract for the next 3 years. That's a remarkable core to have of talent and youth together. Now, some notable absences would be Ben Mathurin, restricted free agent after the next 2 years, Isaiah Jackson, obviously, and Myles Turner, the big one. But in general, they have a very strong core locked up for a very long time. That is what you hope to do. And they do not have a bad contract on the books. Now, McConnell's one is interesting. A part of the reason I have suspicions that this isn't fully guaranteed in the out years is because, look, I said this with Siakam, even though I do think Siakam's game will age well, but people say that about every player, right, that they cover. Oh, their game should age well. TJ McConnell is 6 feet tall, and his game relies on speed. That is not the type of player whose game typically ages well. Maybe his will. He's so crafty. He's so sneaky. Perhaps those little tiny shifty moves he has will skate past guys forever. Maybe they don't, though. And so the out years of this will be interesting. But I think this is smart. Brian Windhorst got me doing this. When I think about extensions, my immediate first thought is that contract tradable, positive value right now? He already had positive value to me, and he's barely making more. In fact, his growth in salary next year, and really every year of this extension, will be less than the growth of the salary cap every year. So if TJ McConnell is not actively declining in ability for the next 3 or 4 years, this is a positive value contract to me. We heard all about the Suns having interest in McConnell last year. There were certainly other teams when it was precarious if he'd even be in the rotation. Another remarkable feat that he got to this point, given that last year we predicted on this show, and we were right about this, he would not be in the rotation on opening night. And it turns out they couldn't live without this guy. And that is another reason why they had to trip all over themselves to get the extension done. Over 10 points a game. Brilliant passer. 7th and 6th man of the year. 2 straight seasons over 40% from 3, albeit on exceedingly low volume. Beast finisher in the lane. It felt like he never missed that 8-footer for the last couple months of the season. Slashed his turnover rate, upped his assist rate. Crazy good true shooting the last 2 years. Fits the Pacers system. Can play Tyrese Haliburton style. Do I need to continue the checklist? I don't think I need to. It's so obvious why they would want to keep someone like this, and it's so obvious they wanted to because they did it. They agreed to terms on a deal, and TJ McConnell at 32, in the city he loves, just had a second kid. It makes a ton of sense why he'd want stability, and now, because this deal makes his total contract length more than 3 years, or added 3 years, he cannot be traded for 6 months. Now, as I'm talking, it's 5:10 p.m. Eastern time on the 30th. Nothing has officially crossed the wire yet, but that doesn't matter because if this is signed at any point from now until the season starts or now ever, if the exact parameters reported are correct, he cannot be traded for 6 months, which means TJ McConnell cannot be traded this coming season. Great stability for him, a good contract for him, a deal he earned in his journey from undrafted to backup, to barely making the Sixers, to, oh, he's kind of good for the Sixers, to, oh, the Pacers really want to do the backup, to, oh my gosh, the Pacers can't live without him, to getting extended again. He can make almost $100 million in his career. What a journey. Didn't get drafted in this building that I'm in, but certainly worthy of the money. Let's talk a little bit more about some of this, why he earned it, the Pacers core coming up. And then again, next Monday, we'll get deeper into the ripple effects in terms of what this means for Myles Turner next year, what this could indicate about the Pacers' plans for the coming season. But before we do any of that, let's talk about the great folks over at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about them here. They're America's #1 sportsbook. Well, guess what? we have something a little different for you because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5. Just make a $5 bet, anything. You'll get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account, a current form of payment. You can cancel any time. But again, $5 bet on FanDuel. You'll get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. You can watch the Colts. I'm getting football pilled with college starting. To get that offer, you just go to FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, FanDuel.com. Check it out today. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for tuning in on the weekend. If you are, I apologize for the janky setup and hopefully not janky audio quality, but thanks for making us your first listen today on this lovely weekend. We will continue rocking here on the TJ McConnell extension. I apologize for some awkward pauses there. My mic broke twice. My travel mic. Not having a good day here in this lovely convention center. TJ McConnell now under contract in total for 5 years, $54 million. So just under $11 million per year for him for the next 5 seasons with the Pacers and how this works. And I think it's so intentional how they've structured this. Another thing that makes McConnell so valuable to this team and something we've seen the Pacers at least consider this summer as they re-signed Obi Toppin as well is their bench group really worked, right? Not only were their bench players good, right? They could bring in Obi Toppin and TJ as their first 2 postseason subs and feel good about that. They could play an entire bench unit, which in the playoffs is not typically very smart for teams to do. They could play McConnell and Toppin and Shepherd together, and even another guard if they wanted to. Sometimes McDermott was in there, and Isaiah Jackson or whoever the center was, and it worked. That group was good, and a lot of it was TJ McConnell being good. A big theme for those of you who listen every day. Last season, Derek Kramer and I talked about this, and a lot of guests and I talked about this, was the Pacers would be in a game where the fourth quarter would start, and they're up by, let's say, 8, maybe 10. And the Pacers would start the fourth quarter with their normal rotation, their benches on the floor. And the other team, hoping to make a comeback, would have their starters out there, right? So a big stretch to start the fourth in those games. Pacers bench versus other team starters, Pacers bench trying to hold the lead. And they would win every time. The Pacers bench would win that every single time because McConnell was the biggest part of it. I kept wondering, how is this possible? They're not defending that well, but they keep doing it. It was almost all McConnell. And everybody else was finishing his plays. Toppin could shoot. Smith and Jackson were wonderful in that group. And Shepherd was great. It was so much McConnell creating it and making it all in motion. And now that is still intact. They kept Toppin. They kept McConnell. They have Shepherd for a while. Mathurin's back in the mix. They have Jackson still. That group's back, right? And so it just makes so much sense to keep that strength together. It allows you to keep your starters at the appropriate level of minutes, something Pascal Siakam and Andrew Nembhard's agents talked about in an article with Mark Medina and Sportskeeda. It just makes so much sense from a team cohesion perspective to keep that group together, even though financially, we'll get to this once the deal is official, and I know all the parameters, it'll make it easier to talk about the ripple effects on Monday. But that all just makes so much sense, right, to keep that together if you can. Now, the run-it-back plan is really happening for the Pacers. Everybody they can extend or could have re-signed, they did, except for Jalen Smith, right? So a lot of the same faces and a lot of the same numbers on the books for the coming season, which the only difference is expectations are coming. McConnell's been on good teams, right? In Philly, they just made the conference finals, right? He knows what it takes, but expectations are coming for this team, especially now that the whole group is together and has lengthy contracts, but so much of their top talent from last season is returning or has new deals or will just be around for a long time, right? And I think that's smart business by the Pacers, who clearly are targeting something, right? And this is so interesting to me. We heard about this before last year when they talked about how they changed their thinking, right? And they have this new 5-year plan or whatever it was, however long they were thinking out after trading for Haliburton and kind of getting younger, right? And they stunk the first year of that. That's how rebuilds go. But then they made the conference finals. They really accelerated. And their goal, they said at X interviews, was they were hoping to make the conference finals within 3 years of starting that plan. They did it in 1. So now what do you do from that? You keep that together and figure out what you need to add or what you can make trades off of from there. And so clearly that's their plan, because for the next at least 3 seasons, you're going to hear a lot of the same names and you're going to hear a lot of those guys in trade discussions if the team needs to get better, but they still don't have a bad contract on the books. And a team that has a 5-year plan, well, now their 5-year plan is, we got the right players. No, that's what the front office is saying. We've got the right players. We've got to use them constructively. And losing TJ McConnell for nothing would have been a mistake, right? We talk about that all the time with the best players, right? Oh, they can't lose Myles Turner, Buddy Hield, whoever for nothing. They have to trade them while their contract is expiring. Now the Pacers are good. They don't have to think that way, right? Sometimes an expiring contract is valuable because they're actually playing basketball for your team. That's more valuable than any asset you could get. In this specific case, though, he would have been like Turner this year, or like Buddy Hield last year, like Turner the year before, or name your player, a player that gets talked about a ton for trades because their contract is expiring. What does that actually mean? Should they move him? Should they not? Now, that's over. Both for two reasons. One, because they legally can't trade him, and two, because he's not an expiring deal anymore, right? So unless he is actively bad. And I think McConnell's worst season with the Pacers, right? He had that year where he hurt his wrist and only played 27 games, whatever. I can't remember if it was his third year. I think it was when he stopped making every 8-footer he took for a second. It looked like, what's going to happen here? Should he really be playing all the time? What's the situation going to be? He's back to being that guy who just makes that shot all the time. Yeah, the year he played 27 games, he really struggled inside the arc. That shot wasn't falling as much. His mid-ranger wasn't falling as much, just way down. Impact stats way down. And that was even before he got hurt. He came back at the end of the year just to get some reps in, but all the stats were worse. And then he bounced back in a major way. And then he got even better at age 32. And I asked him about that. How did that happen? He said, I just keep getting better, and I have to credit my teammates. Chad Buchanan made it very clear what the Pacers' intent was here, right? He said about TJ, I think everybody saw his value throughout the year over the last few years, but to see it really shine in the playoffs was something I think was a big goal for TJ, and he accomplished that this year. To have him here long-term, we'd love to keep TJ as a Pacer for life, and the business part eventually comes into play for everybody, but would hate to lose that guy. That should have been a tell that I was too low on this transaction potentially happening. But the business part stuck with me so much from that quote. Chad Buchanan also said, phenomenal year for TJ. I don't know what more you can say about TJ, what he's meant to this team, beloved by his teammates, his coaches, the staff, and the fans. That's what you want an Indiana Pacer to be about. This seems like someone they would like to have for a long time, potentially even into coaching if he's interested in that route. Obviously, a family business at that point. So clearly they wanted to have him around. I think Chad Buchanan said the Pacer for life stuff on the radio too. And so they did it. They went out and they made it happen. If you think that way, that's key. And I think the other part of Buchanan's quote that sticks and matters so much is a lot of what the Pacers would think about with building their team is talent, But if you can't play in the playoffs or you're limited in the postseason, you're less valuable to the Pacers, even if you're a good regular season player, because their goals aren't about the regular season anymore. Their goals are about winning in the postseason. And TJ McConnell was awesome in the playoffs last year. I brought it up at the beginning, but upping his scoring, almost 12 points per game, 5.1 assists. He shot 49% from the field. Remarkably good. Kept those bench units humming, kept the Pacers looking good, and now he can continue to do that for the next 5 years. Now, again, I assume once this becomes official, I'll be able to get the contract details this weekend. So Monday, we'll have a lot more to get to. What does this mean for Myles Turner? That's the biggest question I got on Twitter immediately. And I'm glad people are asking because that means they're listening. The cap situation is going to be fascinating. What does this mean for maybe Ben Mathurin, who his injury is actually kind of the catalyst that helps TJ McConnell get going? These are the kind of questions that come next when more details come in as we look through the Pacers' future cap situation. For now, good deal for McConnell to me. I think the years make it so they can bring down the annual value. But again, once we see the structure, we can really talk about that. I think that this value makes sense for good backup point guards. How will he age will be an important question. What does it mean for the rest of the roster will be an important question. And we'll tackle all those on Monday's episode. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. Hope this scratches your itch on this news, and we'll get to more on Monday. Till then, everybody, thanks for rocking with me on the weekend. We'll see you very soon.